Okay, welcome back, everybody. We're getting ready to start with our next presentation now, who is Maurizio Beata, who has come all the way from Italy to be with the Congress today and to share some never before revealed information, first-person accounts about Colonel Philip Corso. Maurizio has been involved in the UFO field for forever, it seems. He publishes probably Europe's finest UFO magazine, Area 51. During the course of Maurizio working in the field, when Colonel Philip Corso was still with us, he made two extensive trips to Italy, two extensive trips. At Mauricio's behest, to present at conferences in Italy. Now, Colonel Corso, of course, was of Italian descent, so for him this is like coming home. And he revealed a lot of information there that is generally unknown here. The Congress has tried to get Maurizio to come. Most of you know at least on two other occasions. Now, both of those times, the real reason he didn't come was because he was threatened with severe legal actions and, ladies and gentlemen, honest to God, even with bodily harm if he were to come to the United States. And finally, you know, Maurizio is a brave guy. And finally, he said, essentially, to hell with it. This is all my personal experiences, all of my personal interviews, all of my personal information with Mr. Corso, and no one has a right to keep it from the world. So he's here this year, in spite of everything. Just a few minutes ago, Maurizio was served with legal papers. And you know, guess what? He's here anyway. And you are going to get an amazing presentation today, ladies and gentlemen, from Maurizio. I want to point one thing out to you. The attorney of record on these legal papers is William A. Kent. And he is acting on behalf of Corso Holdings, LLC. I also want you to know this. The Congress has also been served with legal papers. Not this year, but during the past years when we had attempted to get Maurizio to come over. And interestingly enough, the papers that we were served and sent from Mr. William A. Kent, Esquire, originated from the fax machine of UFO magazine. So, I think all of you can therefore interpolate where the roadblock to the truth is coming from and who's really involved with that. And you know what? Well, I think I might cancel my subscription. All right, so now you know. Ladies and gentlemen, the man, Maurizio Beata.
My father first arrived in this country in 1902, more than a century ago. He just arrived from a city from Sicily called Marsala. those were the times where the immigrants of Italy had the dream of establishing themselves in this country, in the United States, as millions of other people were doing from all over the world. My father spent 50 years of his life in the United States, and then he got back to Italy. That was 1949. He remarried, and that's why I'm here. And I tell you what, my mom is so proud that I'm here. And also my father would be very proud. The question of legacy of the Italian presence in the United States is essential for me. When I decided to move from Italy and get to New York, was the year '79. And I was a young, fresh journalist, rock and roll journalist, to be more exact. Yeah, I used to write for many Italian magazines specialized in rock and roll music, progressive music, actually. And I became also editor-in-chief of the Italian edition of Rolling Stone magazine. And then they stabbed me on my back, as usual. It happens all the time. Now, before, I got these troubles with the discs, and now I do have same troubles with the flying discs. Nothing changes, you know. Everything is the same, and same. The story repeats itself. But when I started looking for my being in the United States, in New York, and becoming a New Yorker, I decided that journalism was really my way of life. I understood many things living in New York, having contacts with the different communities, with a lot of people. They taught me how to investigate, how to be stubborn, and how to be sincere in writing articles for the Italian newspaper Il Progresso Italo-Americano. Now, the name of the newspaper is America Oggi. That means America Today. Already then, from '79 to '86, I had a chance to see that here in the United States, the UFO research field was extremely exciting, extremely alive compared to the Italian one. So I started seeing that the situation was offering me a great deal of a chance, learning a lot. Investigative journalism, it's something that you don't, that they don't teach at school. Absolutely. You understand that news are to be given to the people as you recall them. You don't have to make fancy stories over the news. You just have to keep the track. Find a common sense, reasonable idea behind this news and respect the 5 W's law. This principle, when I got back to Italy in '86, this principle for me were the same. And at that time, I started looking for UFOs, how to send the message to the Italians that the UFOs were real, the phenomenon was there, and the Roswell crash was real, first of all. Nobody knew anything about Roswell in Italy. So I started producing videos. Also, I was very lucky, producing videos, and we did have great chances of broadcasting these videos between '91 and '95 until a turning point. The infamous autopsy footage in 1995, which gathered a crowd, an audience of 15 million viewers in 3 nights for Rai 2, the Italian second state channel. Now, the word state, it is extremely important. State controls you. State controls information. State controls the information about UFOs, especially if you go in there and you tell them, look, something crashed 50 or something years ago, and we have to tell the people. And they don't believe you. I mean, if you talk to a manager of RAI, like NBC probably in those times, 15 years ago, they will consider you mad, absolutely out of your mind. And instead, they did it, and we started. From that point on, I kept following the entire overall situation, Italy included, and I found out that the worst things are happening within the UFO organizations, not out of the organization, but within the organizations. Thank God I am an independent researcher, and I'm a journalist, and I will show you now what are we doing with Area 51, just with this brief presentation, very brief, 7 minutes. We can start the PowerPoint. Now, already the fact that we call ourselves UFO and Exopolitics magazine is something that the UFO traditional people, they don't like it. Especially in Italy. They are nuts and bolts, still. They consider the phenomenon as something that you have to work on the statistics. Sightings, archival materials, and then cover up. The good files within the Italian organizations are going to the Secret Service. The bad files are shown to people. This is our last issue, and this is the special we have done with the Roswell case 7 months ago. This is one of the most startling sighting events that occurred in nearby Rome 3 years ago. This guy is a contactee, as usual. I don't know why, but the contactees, they get the best footage ever. This is the sighting that occurred a month ago in Milano. If you notice, many of these lights are recurring all over, and they're quite starting similar to the Hessdalen lights, the Norwegian lights. These were taken by Professor Teodorani in Arizona 2 years ago. These two guys were already in the knowledge of what the situation with the cover-up and the EB was administered by the Majestic 12, as the documents are documenting. This is a rendition of the so-called BMW type. This is Helen Hynek with Sigismund, I believe. This is Alan again. This is a letter to Paula Harris from Alan Hynek. This is them. Okay, this guy, his name is Frank Pryor. He found this very strange skeleton in somewhere here in the States, and we are publishing the story of Frank Pryor and this creature called Ralph. This depicts instead something that's going on in up in the north of Norwegia. It's a new starting situation that we are following. This is the K-Bap video. All this stuff you can find it through internet. And this is Miranda that I love too much. when I was a kid. But now my friends here from Australia, they told me that picnic hanging rock is not true, and I'm so disappointed. This is the story that we are gathering in Italy regarding the abductions phenomenon. This is Andy, as the Sirpo people are purporting to tell us. And this is the infamous Santilli footage. This is a case concealed by the Italian aeronautics in '67. This is Italy '93. This is Italy '77. All these pictures that I'm showing you is Italy. This is the phenomenon called the humanoid, the flying humanoids that we do have in Italy. This is over the base of Aviano, still the base of Aviano, at Sanato base up in the north of Italy. Picturing the stealth followed by strange little dots. And now we are getting to Corso. This is documented the fact that some of the original drawings and documents were given to me by the late colonel. And these are the years that he spent in Italy. We follow the tracks of Corso, obviously. He told us to do that. Therefore, here he is with a friend of ours that probably is listening right now. And this is the cover of Hera, the other magazine published by us. That's mainly exoterical and forbidden archaeology and forbidden truth. And this is it just as beginning. Now we can get to Corso. Now, I don't think that many of you know that Corso, before he died, I believe a couple of months before he died, signed an affidavit stating that he was proceeding, having a legal action against the United States Army, swearing that the events in which he was the protagonist after the Roswell incident were real. As far as we know, this affidavit that was also submitted by Caus had never had a response, an official response. Now, I did ask Colonel, please tell me, why are you doing so? Why you sign an affidavit? And he said to me, because it was not enough for me to have just a book out and not being believed by the majority of the researchers. So the affidavit probably will tell them that I am truthfully and honorably respecting what I have written, and I'm ready to testify this in front of any judicial court or hearings up to the Congress. I don't know how long it passed, but then he died. And eventually Corso, like Jim McDonald, died twice. And I tell you why. Because he had 2 heart attacks. The first one, he survived it. And that occurred when, I had the date somewhere here. Well, it's not so important, the date. Well, well, doesn't matter. But he survived the first one. And a few days later, since his recovery was almost miraculous, through Paula Harris, we had the chance to talk to Corso, and he said, look, somebody help me. I felt like during my coma, I felt that a sort of a light, and a hand was appearing from nowhere and posing the fingers over my chest. And I started breathing again, and my breath became more and more efficient. And here I am, I'm perfectly well, Maurizio. So don't worry, because they are taking care about me. Now I said, okay, at that point I said, Colonel Corso, unfortunately, he's an old man, he got a stroke already, he's in bad shape mentally also, not at all. He was clear-minded. Then I spoke to Phil Jr., and I said, Pop is doing very good. So we are expecting him to be in perfect shape in 2 or 3 days. We will start again packing all the materials, the books that he has to write, and whatever we have to organize again to continue his activity. But then the second heart attack occurred, and that was Thursday, July 16, 1998. He died of an heart attack in Port St. Lucie, Florida. Problem is that when the family understood that fateful morning that something was again very wrong, they called up immediately the same hospital where Corso was cured and saved before. And that was Jupiter Medical Center at Palm Beach, Florida. But instead, that's my note, during the afternoon on the same day, there was a miraculous and they went not able to get through the hospital, and let's say that another ambulance arrived. Corso was still alive. Phil Jr. was on his side. As far as I know, Phil Jr. said and asked to accompany his father, and he was refused. They didn't permit that. So Corso went on the ambulance, and he died during transportation. The unpublished manuscripts of Corso are here in my hands. This is it, Dawn of a New Age, the manuscript, the original manuscript. It consists in 176 pages. The last page is handwritten and is called The Chip. And it tells you the story of not the integrated circuit as we may expect, but the way an EB can work as a biological system, perfectly functioning as an integrated machine with another integrated machine, that's the UFO, the environment that envelopes the creature. Now, the story with this book is that when Corso gave me the copy, he told me, Maurizio, you must publish it as soon as possible, because this one tells you the truth. Instead, the other book, this one, the Italian edition of The Day After Roswell, exactly the same translation, the same spelling, Il giorno dopo Roswell, is pure fiction. He said to me that he wouldn't recognize as his own opera, Il giorno dopo Roswell, this one. But he will recognize as his own opera this one, Dawn of a New Age. The reason why I was not able to come to this conference twice already, because for this book I signed a contract, and I did publish it in Italy, and it's the only overall edition worldwide, and is the diary of Colonel Corso. Now, I believe that it's time to introduce you the 28 minutes of this first part of the Corso interview that I've done on April, I believe, the 13th, 1998. This was shot on beta, is uncut and unedited. My questions maybe are not really clear, but we can run the first tape.
I knew Trudeau when he was Chief of Army Intelligence. And he came to Germany when I commanded the battalion, and he sent for me and USAR headquarters told me General Trudeau's coming and wants to see you. So I saw the general, and what he wanted to see me for, he said, I'm reorganizing research and development. When you go back to the States, you're going to come with me. Well, when I went back to the States, about 3 or 4 months after I was back, I get an order from the Pentagon to report to the Chief of Research and Development. I walked into General Trudeau's office, saluted him, he looked at me, he said, you aboard, Phil? I told him, yes. Then he gave me an order, and he never gave it to me after. He said, Phil, watch things for me, the rest don't understand. And we had 3,000 officers in R&D. Of course, I'd been with him before, see. And that was the order he gave me, watch things because the rest don't understand for me. And this was the operation, actually, the Roswell operation, the artifacts, ended up in that area. But sometimes I often wondered because I didn't even understand them, what we had. But gradually it developed. We knew they were important, and we knew there was something there, and we had the talent, the organization, and the money to push these things forward, which we did. And we gave them out to industry. And most of the time, there were no strings attached. The only strings we attached was return them to us for a competitive edge of the Army and give them to the people. This was the only requirement that was written in the contracts. The stuff had to come back to us first. And then they were free to give it out if they wanted to use it. It was theirs. Of course, Bell Telephone went ahead and got patents and used it for commercial purposes and took royalties. Now other companies are challenging those. Of course, that's their affair. We won't enter into it.
And the scientists that you contact personally were the ones that the Americans brought from Germany?
No, not totally. I had 2 of the German scientists of Operation Paperclip. 2 of them were actually on my team. The general gave me the team to investigate a line of atoms in metals, which we didn't succeed because it was quite a big operation. And these scientists were on my team. But there was many American scientists. The general's orders were go out and find people that are working in the direction of what we think these things are. And that's in the book. That's what my instructions were. So I found out at our own laboratories and universities. I made a search. Of course, I had help. I didn't do this myself only. And industry. We went around and visited 25 of the top Fortune 400 industries. And we fed R&D contracts into them. If a man was working, someone was working on, say, something like a transistor or something like an integrated circuit, electronics, we used our own laboratory on electronics at Fort Monmouth, and we also fed these things to industry that were working along that line. We just didn't take the artifacts and give them to any industry. There had to be some relationship between this thing, what we thought it was, and industry was working on. That's where we put the material into. Like Monsanto, they worked on the fibers. And they had to be in the business before we would finance it and put the project in. Then in the second or third stages, we actually would give them one of the artifacts to analyze, but not in the first stages. And the hold we held on them, it was our money. It was research and development money. Now, that's what American Computer's going to come back in. You were financed by money that came from the American people, and you took royalties. Let them fight it out, though. That's where they're fighting it out now. And if they want to fight, let them fight. We accomplished our mission. The integrated circuit turned into the supercomputer in 30 years. And we were a little bit worried about that, like I told the general. What are we unleashing on the world, General? We don't know what this thing will end up. What if it integrates with the brain? Are we going to create a race of monsters? And the general thought, and he said, here's his exact words. He said, well, Phil, let's hope that the people come after us recognize this danger. And possibly, he said, it won't be in our lifetime. Well, it wasn't in his lifetime. He died 3 years ago. And so that's some of the instructions that I operated under from General Trudeau and how we did it.
And the artifacts that were given to you, can you make just a rapid, quick list of them?
Well, it's in the back of the book, a quick list. It was transistors, fiber optics, integrated circuits, laser, and super tenacity fibers. Those were the important ones. There were other things I did too. Like in the Gulf War, you read about spent uranium warheads. I got that originally from the Swiss, because I headed foreign technology. My foreign technology division, the cover was foreign technology of this world. But on the side, never written, was foreign technology of other worlds too. That we didn't make public, because we'd have been tabbed as kooks immediately. That had destroyed our organization and our budget, and we knew that. After all, we had had experience. I was on the White House for 4 years. I knew how the government operated. General Trudeau knew how the government operated, and the other people I worked with. We were familiar with the government. We were familiar with CIA's operations, State Department operations. We knew this. We knew the way they operated and who the people were. In fact, I discussed this very thoroughly with Robert Kennedy, at the time Attorney General, the President's brother. He and I discussed this exact problem. He knew about the flying saucers. I talked to him about it. I used to meet him when he was Attorney General right in his office.
Was also President Kennedy informed about it?
Well, I don't know for sure, but what went to Bobby went to the President also. In fact, before I testified in my, when I testified in 1962 on my 4 years at the White House, before I consented to testify, I told him if I get a subpoena, I told him you still can't make me talk if I don't want to. The deal was, and Senator Eastland, Chairman of the Judiciary Committee, promised me, I told him I will testify under one condition, not that you put in the files and let it gather dust. Since I take all the risks, I will testify under one condition, that you put this testimony in the hands of the Kennedy brothers. Senator Eastland assured me he'd do it personally, and he did. And that's why the Attorney General called me. He wanted to discuss my testimony first.
Okay, and let's go back to the subject of the artifacts. One particular artifact was a sort of night viewer or something like that.
Yes, it was, I had two objects. One looked like a flashlight, a small flashlight. And of course, like a human being that doesn't know too much, stupid human, I figured the battery was dead and it wouldn't come on. There was no battery in it. But that's the way that's all we knew. So one day I had this thing out, and I could never get it to come on or operate. I didn't know what it was. And the shell was so tough, it was like the atomic island, that you couldn't get it. And we didn't want to cut through them, and if it was important to ruin it, was the inside. So I decided to take it down to our atomic lab at Fort Belvoir. We had our atomic laboratory that's made the atomic engine, and the portable atomics that went to McMurdo were made at Fort Belvoir. And I went down there, since I knew them most of them personally. It was our laboratory after all. And we tried this thing under long, low waves in radiation. Lo and behold, it came on. And here, it didn't have any battery like I thought the battery was. There was no such thing, but it came on. Fiber optics was the same thing. We didn't know what we had. I couldn't even tell if it was wires or what it was. But we gradually fed it to laboratories and people, and they discovered what they were. Now, most of our communication is fiber optics. So this is the way the things would developed along this line. All the items went out. Now, they went out as normal research and development projects, not as something radical. At the beginning, it didn't go out that way. We would start them and then watch it, and eventually we would feed them the object.
And the viewers?
What's that?
The viewers, the...
Oh, night viewing device?
Yes.
Well, actually they're called image intensifiers. The simplest word is night viewing devices. That mostly, they came from, we used two sources. One was the German infrared, which was pretty good, and the other was the eyelid of the extraterrestrial. These extraterrestrials can see in the dark. Actually, the eyelid was a light collector. And behind we made an item that collected rays and reinforced them. And that was the beginning of the night viewing device, or integrated imaging devices, we call them. A general entrusted me that I went down to investigate the lab to see how they were coming along, and I took a German scientist with me. And we looked at the lab, and at first the commander said he had misgivings when he heard I was coming. I told him, well, I have that bad a reputation of being a hatchet man. And he sort of smiled because they knew that when I came, I had authority even to cancel contracts. But they didn't know that I was carrying in my pocket an envelope, their budget. And when at the exit interview, I told the commander, well, you had misgivings I was down here, but we looked over your work, and you're doing a good job. In fact, look at my German friend there. He never smiles, and he liked what you're doing, what he saw here. So this time, instead of a hatchet man, I'm going to act like a Santa Claus. I pulled the envelope, and the decision, the general told me, if you're convinced that they're doing a good job, give them the budget.
Okay, let's go back.
And I handed them the budget. So I was a good guy then. I did the same thing on irradiated food. The general and I took off one day in a helicopter, went to Richmond, Virginia. The laboratory, quartermaster laboratory down there, was experimenting on radiated food. I ate a steak, and the general, they prepared a dinner for us. A steak had been on the shelf with no refrigeration for 2 years. And they had strawberries. We had a steak and strawberries for dessert that had been on the shelf for a couple of years. They were irradiated. Still today, I remember I said, I told the general last night, I asked the general one day, how do you fight stupidity? Well, most of the American public today has been convinced by the damn stupid do-gooders that radiation is bad. And radiation is harmless. I ate a steak in 1961, and I'm still here. I ate a radiated steak and radiated strawberries. It preserves them. We could solve the starvation of the world with this. Yet our do-gooders, since there's atomic mentioned in it, radiation, they scream high heaven. I told you the one that we made at McMurdo Air Force, we had a portable atomic installation that made 10,000 gallons of potable water a day. In 6 years we had it there, it made over 10 million gallons of fresh water from seawater. Yet that thing came back to the States and was destroyed. It was a portable atomic using Pu-238.
Can we go to the Italian scientists that you met here in Rome and their research and approach?
Yeah, in fact, just a few days ago, I gave you the internet thing. Some scientists picked up page 192 and 193 of my book. When I was in charge of the security here in Rome, from 1943 to 47, was very fortunate at the time. I was 26 years old, but I was very fortunate. I met people like Professor Castellani. Professor Castellani was in the 60s, world famous. He isolated sleeping sickness, and he made the famous Castellani ointments. Professor Casimiro Frank, he was the first man to photograph brainwaves. He photographed the brainwaves of a rabbit. He told me one day that when there's paralysis in the muscle, it's not that the muscle is not receiving brainwaves. Many cases it's receiving the wrong brainwave, and he had to correct it to put the right one in to cure paralysis. And he was effective. He was doing a good job. Then I met the professor of the University of Rome, Gislero Flesch. He told me one night, I'm going to teach you the secret of life. And he taught me how the human cell vibrates, an electrical instrument. Now scientists proved that it is. So these type of events I learned in Rome. One scientist read my book. He picked out page 192 and 193 and 194, where I talk about this. Now, I used this material when I had to get into electromagnetism, because what we did in research and development, there was one strain that worked all the way through in everything we did. Electromagnetism showed up in almost every case. So electromagnetism was important. And then Wilbur Smith came from Canada and verified that for me. And then if you read Tesla's works, it verifies that. Electromagnetism, and Wilbur Smith of Canada called it the boundary areas of electromagnetism we have to study. So that was the Italian scientists. Now, this was very effective because as I was working on these artifacts, I remembered what these people had told me. The composition of the human body is what they were working on in Italy in 1942. Just think of that. Curing advanced cases of cancer in those days with a resonator. They claimed that the body would get out of resonance, and they had to put it back in. And they were working along that line, yet it never spread. because the rest of the world and the American Medical Association and so forth said, oh, they're crazy, they don't know anything. These were brilliant men. The Castellani ointments, Castellani himself told me one day. Well, show you what kind of man he was. One of my counterintelligence agents was in the hospital one day, and the boy had swelled and he was itching all over his body, swelled up. So I went down there, he said, they're shooting me with penicillin, streptomycin, and I get worse. I'm miserable, all swollen, itching. So I told my driver, go get Professor Castellani, because he made the Castellani ointments for the skin, and bring him here. In the American hospital, of course, I needed an escort to get him. So he went in. About an hour later, my phone rings. I went back to my office, and it was Professor Castellani. He said, Senor, of course, I'll have your boy back to work tomorrow. I put some ointment on his hair. He said he's allergic to his own dandruff. Now, this was the type of man that Castellani, he was world famous at the time. And Castellani told me his ointment was based on, not that they put an ointment on the skin. He said when he put it on, it really affected, not to cure the bacteria, but to affect the atomic structure of the skin. So he said when he puts it on and it affects the atomic structure, he said the brain does the rest. That's his theory behind his ointments. And his ointments were world famous. I remember being a boy back in the United States buying Castellani ointments. Now you tell me that Paul and them have searched and they can't find any reference. There must be reference, because I had some books that he'd written. Where are they now? I don't. The book on Casimiro Frank, the photographed brainwaves, that book was gotten for me from a publishing house in Milano. I brought it home, and it was in Italian, and I gave it to some doctors, because I asked the people here, how come you're telling me this? They said, well, we like what you're doing in Rome, and we know what you're like, and you'll maybe remember this and tell people about it someday. Well, this happened. I got it in the book now, and the internet now is picking it up.
Okay.
They actually mentioned page 192 and 193, and I gave you the internet thing.
Okay. And let's say that the alien technology and the status of research already in the early 40s in Italy and some other countries, well, they show that maybe the future for humankind, from a technical point of view, will offer us some chances. What do you think that the status quo actually is, and when we are going technically wise?
Well, if you think now, when I talk about the body as an electrical instrument, and the cells are electronic, and even this laser cutter on the mutilation doesn't cut through cells that the extraterrestrials made. Now, in everybody's opinion, they think, well, he's talking about present day. I'm not. I'm talking about 1941 and 42, when these people were doing this here in Rome, when I was fortunate enough to be the Allied G2. And these people showed me this. The future, I think that eventually is going to come up. We're going to study this clone and possibly duplicate this clone. And what's it all based on? The human body is an electrical instrument. It's composed of electrical cells. Even AIDS, where I think that if they fight us, they're not going to fight us on our level with cannons and guns. If they're super intellect, they're going to fight us different. AIDS appeared in 1985. Where did it come from? Science now has discovered it's a living entity within the body. Now, I don't know if you ever read that. The science says it's a living entity. Where did it come from? I never heard of it before 1985. Maybe I should have. I was in intelligence. But once it appeared on the world. Maybe Linda Howe is right. It says alien harvest. Maybe that's what they're up to. And that's speculation yet, but that's what you tie together.
And let's say that from a propulsion point of view, we have here Carlos Diaz with us, and I wonder if we can talk about the difference between metallic objects and objects which apparently are directly connected to the bodies of these creatures. In other words, first of all, what do you think about the pictures that we saw before, and that what type of time machine was the one that you saw in a certain moment?
I don't know that. I discussed that with the Germans and with Hermann Obert. No, I don't know enough about that really to discuss the mechanism of a time machine. The British are closer to that. They were working on time machines in the past. And they were, you know, the British got most of the documents at Peenemünde. They were there before us. They knew what was there. The British actually worked on a time machine. How far they advanced, how far it operated, I don't know. So I'm really not competent to talk about the structure of a time machine. Maybe I can talk about the peripheral area, but not inside. Because many people have asked me if I ever saw a flying saucer. I told them, well, that's not important. My whole operation is, if I see a flying saucer, immediately I think, I like to know what's inside that thing. Not that it's flying in the air, but what makes it fly. That's what I worked on. And as far as my interest in flying saucers is still, I like to know what's in there. And in the book, I answered his question.
Yeah. Go ahead.
He told me in Italian what it was.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I answered it all for him.
Yeah, but we need it in comment.
Oh, you still?
Yeah.
Wasn't that on when I answered?
Now it's on.
He asked me, is there things yet that we had which haven't been developed? Yes, certain things. Laser hasn't reached where it should be. Fiber optics and the integrated circuit, great developments. The integrated circuit, for example, has developed into a supercomputer. Marvelous thing. Look at your internet now, the way it operates. It's a marvel. Billions. The bytes go up in the billions. Fiber optics. Most of our communication today, even overseas, is fiber optics. Great developments. Others, like laser, haven't been developed to the extent. Even the composites my son makes his airplanes from still haven't reached the development that I think they'll reach. So some of the items, and other items I saw, for example, the one that really hasn't advanced is alignment of atoms and metals. That hasn't really almost started yet. We failed 30 years ago, and it's still not in, it's still in the pre-development almost stage, I call it, whatever that means. But that hasn't advanced yet, and that's a great advancement. That alone could change the world. An automobile could last forever. All our weapons would be obsolete. You can't penetrate that thing. We tried to make it mainly so we could use our atomic engines. No radiation. They were on the space probes. The little atomic engine was on the moonshot. So we used P-238. We had those engines, but we hadn't what we called, as science call, we hadn't not hardened the circuitry. I discussed this, as I told you last night, I discussed this with Dr. Teller. And he agreed, he told me that Star Wars, still SDI they call Star Wars, still hasn't reached a stage where we could harden the circuitry. Outside influence, radiation could affect it.
Do you believe that the Americans are eventually shooting down some objects coming from the outer space?
Well, now the premise that we operated on was this. We didn't know for sure, like I told you in the incident that I had, where the thing said, I asked a friend or foe, and it said neither. We operated on the premise of this. We don't know if they're enemies, we don't know if they're friends. Just in case, we'll be ready. So we developed Star Wars weapons and laser weapons on that premise, just in case. After all, if you're an army and you don't do that, you're going to be left behind. So that was our motto, just in case. And also the general used to say, if it can be done, I think we can do it. But I failed in the alignment of atoms. General gave me a special assignment. Fund it if you think they're even starting. My time they hadn't even started. IBM now is getting into it, aligning atoms.
You mentioned Edward Teller. Some are thinking that Teller was the head of all types of research conducted in the secret installments called Area 51.
No, that's not so. That's speculation. People, I knew about Area 51. It was a no-fly-over area because of atomic installations. In my day, I was cleared for that. There were developments there, yes. A B-2 and things like that were developed there, but in the development stage, and certain items on the B2 are still classified. Yes, when you develop classified weapons, you protect it. You do protect it, and you don't allow the public or general public to nose around, because even at Roswell, Stalin gave instructions to his top men: find out what happened there, and steal it. They stole our atomic engine, that little engine. They put in their satellites, and now they're leaking.
Yes, but in the same time, reverse engineering stuff taken from alien objects must be conducted somewhere secretly, like Area 51.
Well, I don't know of any. I've been gone, of course, you got to realize I've been gone 35 years too. So I'm not up on it, and for 30 years I didn't go looking for it. I have a lot of friends who tell me things, yet we don't, when we talk, I talk among some of my friends, we don't go by whether I'm cleared or not, or they're cleared or not. We discuss the things. Because I think we have the reputation among many of us is we're not going to talk or spread this out if it's important. We grew up in those stages.
We have 1 minute regarding who was the real president behind everything. I mean, Truman and Eisenhower, basically?
Truman knew about it. In fact, I joined the White House staff in the last 2 months of Truman's administration, when I went into the White House staff. And then Eisenhower was elected already. But Truman was still president when I went in. He knew about it. He knew about flying saucers. So did Eisenhower. So did Kennedy. But you don't put this out in public. Because Wilbur Smith told me, the Canadian genius, he said, of course you people, I'm happy to know what you're doing. I'm glad you let me in on it. I will not betray the trust. But he said, remember one thing. Don't talk about it, because you will put yourself in the position where thousands of questions will be answered that you can't answer. Asked you. And that was Wilbur Smith's words to us. Don't do it, because you'll invite thousands of questions which don't have any answers. And that's still the case. Even today you asked me some questions, I told you there's no answer. I don't know. You asked me who made these clones. I wish I knew. I have no idea. I can only tell you what I know and what I worked with. Who made the clone? I wish I knew. How it was made? I wish I knew. I don't know.
So
Okay.
this interview is just part of the interview I've conducted with Colonel Corso on April 13, 1998. But mainly, I don't have comments regarding what Corso stated. But there is a part of the entire interview that pertains to the Italian situation that Corso was facing in those years. And there is one part regarding the scientist, and the other part that is not expressed here by Colonel Corso. This second part is specifically the activity that Corso was conducting as very important liaison officer for the Allied forces in Rome, stationed in Rome. Now, with Bob here, what we can do is just having, not from Dawn of a New Age, but from other notes that he gave me, we can go a little further into this subject that is extremely, extremely delicate. And I want to proceed this with a consideration. Me and Corso, we were very close. Paola knows it, and Paola, she was very fond with this old man. He was very difficult to treat, believe me. I mean, this doesn't appear. It looks like, you know, an old man, old guy, Not at all. Corso was a tough, very tough man until the last day, I believe. And these notes will specify why. So we can start. These notes were written by Cindy Corso under dictation by her father. So we can start.
Rome, on June 4th, 1944, was a city of wild, joyful demonstration. The Allied forces had moved in, the Nazis were no longer in control, and the whole world looked a lot brighter. However, from the military intelligence aspect, the outlook was grim. We entered Rome with a long list of wanted spies, saboteurs, and collaborators. Keeping subversion under control would be a formidable task. A U.S. officer was assigned the slot of Assistant Chief of Intelligence G2 of the Rome Area Allied Command and assumed the overall responsibility for security of the area. Counterintelligence until this time had been mostly a British responsibility. It was during my G2 assignment that I met, with a formal salute and handshake, the Chief of Italian Military Intelligence, General Pompeo Agrifoglio, a man nearing his 60th birthday.
Okay. Now, who was this guy, Pompeo Agrifoglio? I went through a thorough research regarding Pompeo Agrifoglio, and this general started this activity, as I found out, from the invasion of Sicily till the end of the war, conducting a very small Italo-American group which played a very important part in establishing the relations between Italy, just Fred, and United States. These guys were men of the OSS, Office of Strategic Services, a brand new intelligence American branch included in the operations conducted by SI, Secret Intelligence for Italy. Chief of this Secret Service of OSS was this guy named Biagio Massimo Corvo, a young American, only 23 years old, born in Sicily. His intelligence name was Max. His regular name was Max, but his code name was Maro. At that point, to the Italian section of OSS, was requested to establish a formal contact with, at that time, Colonel Pompeo Agrifoglio, chief of the Italian Secret Service, SIM. Pompeo Agrifoglio was captured in Tunisia. Therefore, Corvo and Agrifoglio started their activity along with an operational agreement between SIM and OSS. Go ahead.
And so began the hard lessons upon which depended the lives of our troops in Rome and the safety of our installations in the area. 4 years later, upon my departure in March 1947, and after the capture and neutralization of 3,300 agents and collaborators, I reflected on how well he taught me the business. During my tour of duty, I controlled what we called a security prison, in which all captured enemy agents and saboteurs were incarcerated before trial or disposition. Being the Allied Chief of Intelligence, the prison and prisoners were my responsibility. One day, General Agrifoglio accompanied me on a tour of the prison. He lectured me on the character of these people His words ran along the following line: "You and I are dealing with the dreg of humanity: thieves, killers, dope addicts, prostitutes, saboteurs, spies, and collaborators. In the United States, you preach fair play. Such an attitude among these people will be interpreted as a sign of weakness. They inform on each other, and they ask you to beat them to prove to the others that they talked under duress. If you think you can treat these types with dignity and fair play, then resign and go home, because you will never have any effective security. Remember, the lives of your troops and the safety of your installations are at stake. When you capture a saboteur, you cannot be fair."
So, from these words, you can easily understand what type of a man Corso was, but he was definitely very, very clear with me with regards with the techniques he had to imply during the interrogations. And the accounts are so gruesome that, believe me, I want to repeat the exact words. But in order to obtain the information, Corso applied any type of force against anybody. A simple suspect must be convinced to tell the truth because they were under a certain situation. The war was ending. The Nazis were fleeing. The Italians were just divided. You know what happened with the partisans and the fascists recruiting and regrouping under Mussolini? Now Corso, on his line of duty, treated everybody with the same token. You talk and you go and you're okay with me. You don't talk and you finish very badly. And this is to be just concise. So me and him, we were not at all going along the same line. So I told him, Corso, Colonel, you are telling me things that I will never accept. How did you do? And let's go ahead.
As a result, we soon established a network of informers, agents, and lookouts patterned after the Italian secret police apparatus. Nazi agents, saboteurs, and collaborators were netted on the average of 20 to 30 a week. As fast as we arrested them, the Germans pushed more at us. 30 days after leaving Italy in March 1947, I was attacked in a 4-column front-page story in the communist newspaper UNITA. This attack really began 2 years earlier. I had strengthened the Italian security forces and stopped many communist moves to upset our security. An officer from the Italian intelligence service delivered an envelope to my office during late 1945. In it was a list of people the communists considered their enemies. I rated near the top. Later, a high Italian government official confirmed this information to me. I remembered Agrifolio's words, "Don't wait, move first." The proud record of the Rome area G2 section. Years 1944 to 1947, when not one American soldier was injured due to subversive action, and not one of our installations was damaged due to sabotage. Thanks to the teaching of men like General Agrifolio, British intelligence revised their opinions. They accepted us after concluding that in many areas of intelligence we surpassed them and had taught them new methods and techniques.
Now we are going to see the second interview just shortly. It will be something like 10, 15 minutes, unless we do have more to spend together this morning. But I believe that this part will be, as far as I recall, a little more pertaining the UFO situation right now. We were discussing this with Corso many times. He considered the UFO researchers as useful idiots. exactly his own words. And I go like, Colonel, but I am a stupid, idiot ufologist. I'm also a journalist, and I'm convinced that, yeah, I might be stupid, but not completely. Therefore, I try to understand through your lines what you really knew about the UFOs before, after Roswell, and now, and why you are dealing with this subject right now. What is the reasoning that conducted you to a point of telling us this type of truth, regardless to the fact that eventually you don't like it? I mean, they don't like you at the government right now. The Pentagon will react. Consider the coincidence of the so-called puppets or the balloon stories that they gave us in 1997, exactly in the same days when the book, the Corso's book, came out in the American bookstores. It is a startling coincidence. But Corso was convinced that nothing was happening just by case. In fact, what he said to me, the United States government and the Army neither attempted nor compelled me to make public the truth about Roswell and UFOs in my possession. They never forced it. When he was down in Italy for the second visit to Italy, no, the first one, we were pretty scared all around. You know, this old man arriving and representing the intelligence of the United States and having such secrets to tell us, I mean, it's not something that happens all the time. So we were supposed to protect him, and in case to be protected also. We were afraid that something negative could happen during the course of the conferences, but nothing happened, really. Only we knew that many debunkers were going to surface all of a sudden, stating that what Corso was saying was not true. Unfortunately, Corso was extremely and elegantly clear-minded and precise in his recalls. So he rebutted and debunked everything that was said personally or approached personally to him. This is the difference between the fact that people in the knowledge, in the personal knowledge of Corso, who have met Corso, can state now something about Corso. Who never met Corso, they cannot talk about Corso. They didn't have any chance to talk to Corso, so they have no right to express anything against him. Even though it's Stanton Friedman, even though it's the best in town, I don't give a damn. Stanton met him, I don't know. They spoke on the phone, yeah, but Stanton didn't like this guy. Why? Because Corso changed the course of ufology. When Corso arrived, the situation in Italy changed abruptly. I will never be confident anymore with one of my colleagues because Corso taught me not to be so gullible to believe the other ufologists. Remember, he told me, the one that you have on your side is the one that will stab you on your back. And that is exactly what happened to me. Therefore, I will introduce now the second part of the Corso tape.
Right today,
Right.
people hear these things.
Right.
We don't know what the humanoid clone, what advancements he can make or how we can make one. So what you have to do, you can't go to the library and get reference books on how he was built. You can't go any place and find this information. You have to start from zero. It's a new science. I've told you the answer. You have to start from zero and promote a new science. That's what you.
Well,
That's what you people have to do. And not only that, I tell you, I'll promote a new science. I'm going to only give you a little bit of help. You have to do the rest yourselves. And if you can't carry it on.
Colonel, but humans could turn into robots with this new science. How do we?
Flip.
How do we?
You know what?
Separate
You know
the
what?
robot
You know
from
what,
the
Dr.
spirit?
Mari? What I told him, and he agreed.
Okay.
And my own doctor. This would be a great boon for mankind if we could give man new muscles, new bones, new organs. Do you realize what that would bring to mankind?
What?
That's what this thing did. Jeez, medical science is coming. Look at the new advances in medical science that we could make. This is what you should do. This is your job. And don't expect 100% help from me. You're going to have to do it. You people. I told you already. And if you don't recognize it and be able to do it, then you shouldn't be involved.
I'm involved.
A
little.
Since I told you these things, I expect you to be involved. And you have no choice once you get involved, you know. I had no choice in this, Rachel, when I got the job. I couldn't say no. I couldn't say I don't want to do it. I had no choice in the thing. I was put there and I had to do it. And when you get a general calls me in and says, you have the authority, you have the budget, you do what you want to do. Now, what can you do in a case like that? You got to do it. And Mauricio, many times that I sat at my desk and figured, what am I doing here? I don't know what to do. You know how often that happened? I said, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what to do. What I do? I got to write a proposal. Where do I start? That's the situation I was in many times. I was no hero. I didn't know what the hell to do most of the time.
I wonder, there were any of your own colleagues, I mean, under Trudeau's administration, in any case, with whom you can talk about this stuff?
Right now, near Orlando, at one of the big corporations there is a General George Samet. George Samet we were together when we were colonels. He ended up a lieutenant general. He was West Point. 4 generals after Trudeau, he became head of research and development. Now, George and I were good friends. I went up to visit him about 2 years ago. And this Colonel John Alexander, who deals in a lot of these things, that runs that institute in Las Vegas. When I went out there, and this Bigelow saw me, he's a billionaire. He wanted me to join his outfit, Institute of Advanced Studies. I turned him down. They told me I was only one of the few men that ever turned him down because he's a billionaire. So what's Alexander do? He goes and visits George Samet in Orlando. And George told him, you better believe what he tells you. I know. But I wasn't in the loop like Phil was. He said, many times I wished I knew, and he was aide to the general. He said, what he says about his closeness with General Trudeau is true. He said, they talked about many things I knew that they were doing, and I'd see them go out together that I didn't even know. He said, but that whole situation actually happened because I was sitting there. And General Samet is still alive. In fact, I went to his 75th birthday party a couple years ago. Samet was there. He was lieutenant. He was one of Trudeau's trusted men. But he told them I wasn't in the loop that Phil and the general had for these other things. I did the other work for him. So it's people like Samet are alive yet.
And he's not available or ready to endorse your version eventually.
Here's the thing, Mauricio. I won't ask him to endorse it. I will not bring his name out. I only told you because you're a friend. I have no right to do that unless he wants to do it. Somebody has to go, like this Alexander, and he told him some things. In intelligence business, once you betray an informant and it gets around, you might as well quit. You never give the name of a man. This was a deputy director of the FBI came one day to my office. He wasn't Sullivan, You know, he didn't know for sure how well I knew J. Edgar Hoover. He sat in front of Senator Thurman, and he said, you made some statements about Kennedy assassination. Yes. Where'd you get that? Deputy Director FBI. I told him, none of your business. I told him, you know this business. And you know damn well that if I give you this name without the source's permission, I might as well quit right now and walk out. And you know I'm not going to give it to you. And he said, I'll report you to the Warren Commission. Go ahead. He didn't know I was working for the head of one of the heads of, go ahead, report me. And then Thurman, Senator Thurman, got angry. He said, what the hell are you trying to do to one of my staff? You know, it was me. Next day he called me. He said, Phil, let's be friends. I told him, friends, after what you did yesterday, you knew that it was against every principle of intelligence to give you a name of a source without his authorization. You knew that, and you tried to get it out of me. You didn't have a chance in hell of getting it out of me. You knew that, and yet you tried. We were never friends. With Sullivan, the deputy director, we were close friends. We used to sit on his boat down in Marco Island in Florida. His wife came over one day, and I told him, well, so you don't want to listen to the two of us? I told him the stuff will be flowing all over the floor, you know, the crap. She said, oh, Colonel, she said, how can I ask you to let me stay and then listen to you two? This is a deputy. Now, I was friends with. And later on, this Deloche was his name. He was public relations of FBI. When he found out how close I was with J. Edgar Hoover, boy, he was always apologizing to me. But you see, Rita, I don't have the right to put those people's names out. They have to come voluntarily. They won't have to do it on their own. Just like those officers that came to me, those colonels at Kirkland, said, you're right. I couldn't say, would you put this in public, or ask them that they had their names, but they knew damn well that I wasn't going to take their names and put it out in public, because then I'm through. I'm finished. Even my friends will say, you betrayed us, and you don't do those things.
Okay, Sergeant Brown, the one that eventually saw the same stuff that you saw in Fort Worth.
He was ready for retirement then. The boy was almost 60 years old. He was in his 50s. He was the blacksmith of the post. He surely is dead now. Or if he's not, he's over 100 years old. How can I tell people, go find Sergeant Brown? And this stupid Hopkins, he said to me, well, you go find his family. How the hell? The guy wasn't married. I don't know where the hell would I find his family after 50 years? The guy's crazy, that Hopkins. Stupid demands that make no sense. And if he's not stupid, then he should know better.
All right. I think that that's enough. I mean, this guy was one of a kind, isn't it? Huh? I'm sorry for... I'm pretty sure that Bud Hopkins, who was a very good friend of mine, will accept these remarks by Colonel Corso just as they were, you know, not a joke, sort of. Now, the point that I'm making right now is that I want Paola Harris on stage, because without her, this will not be possible at all. Please, Paola, join me. I did send Paola Harris to Roswell in 1997. She was staff editor for a magazine that I was managing. And I told her, look, you have to, where's your mic? Right. You have to look for this old man, and you can tell us what happened.
Well, it's in my book, actually, because I didn't want to go. I didn't know who Corso was. I didn't know anything about the book. And not only that, everybody had reserved their seats 6 months in advance. I had no place to stay. In fact, I was going to sleep on the floor in Artesia. But then I went into the press office, and they said, well, listen, there's no place open here, but if you'd like to, you can look in the phone book and find a place. And I opened up the phone book, and in the first place I put my finger on was the Sallyport Inn. And I called, and they had a room for 3 days, and the room happened to be right next to Philip Corso. So it was destiny. I mean, I really believe in destiny. I believe this is all destined. I believe there is a metaphysical component to this. When I did interview Colonel Corso, in fact, I was in the audience. His son actually said, my father speaks Italian. You can ask him a question in Italian. I did. I asked him about the Santilli footage. I want to say that I love the family. I'm very close to the family. In fact, the grandson was at my house. He just got married and was at my house about a month ago. All my stories I get kind of personally involved in, so I know the family very well. And I think, I thank Maurizio, but Maurizio was the editor courageous enough to go ahead with this. I just bring the people in. Everybody else does the work.
Now, as a, you prepare something just to, to conclude.
Since we, as Italians, are very emotional and we get very attached to other people that we work with, and I prepared a PowerPoint presentation as a memorial to the Colonel, and it has images of our life together. The 2 times he came, he was thrilled to be there. He was happy to be there. He gave us, he passed the baton. In fact, he said, Maurizio Baiata, Paola Harris, and Adriano Forgione, I am giving you a hot potato. And we asked him, you heard me there, what are we supposed to do with this? He said, you will know. You will know. And so what happened, the images that I've compiled in the PowerPoint are is this the last part of the presentation?
It is, and I just want to say shortly that the second interview that you saw, just the first initial 10 minutes, is nothing because it is 110 minutes. I do have copies of this interview that will be put on a table outside, but I just have the chance to bring over few of them, something like 10 copies, divided in 2 sections, part 1 and part 2. Many are, just few are NTSC, and the others are PAL, whatever. It is very important, it is an important testimony afterwards. So this is a...
Yeah, and I really think he, he gave us this, passed the baton and gave us this charge, and I think he'd be pretty proud of the work we're doing. So let's do the final PowerPoint.
You can read it there. You can see. So I don't have to add anything at all. This is it for me. Colonel Corso was a great lesson for me because I thought that the militaries are essentially doing their own job in terms of covering up the reality of the UFO phenomenon, and all of a sudden I started seeing the opposite. Many of them had the courage to speak openly. I don't call them whistleblowers. I call them courageous people. And I believe that as far as we are right now in terms of international ufology, for what I can understand also from the United States, being a researcher always connected to America, South America, Russia, or whatever, I can understand that if we continue with this policy of division, of fighting each other, discrediting each other, debunking, we are not going anywhere. Absolutely, that's adamant for me. There is only one possibility against the shadow government and the bad powers who are ruling the world right now. Not only in ufology, in life every day, I can say that united we stand, divided we fall. That's it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maurizio.